good? So I brought 2 bottles of water. I'm dehydrated after sick kids, so thank you very much to them. That was great. And I know we're running a little over on time. My apologies. So here's what I'm going to do. Just pretend I had this unreal intro, like you laughed, you cried, you like me, you respect me, and then we'll get into it, all right? So great. Here's what we're going to do. I've got 2 key points to inspire you, to get you out of here. Here's number 1. You're losing. I don't know why you're laughing. And number 2, it's all your fault. So good luck, have a good flight home. Just kidding. We're not that short on time. All right, so let me unpack this a little bit and then I'll get you out of here, hopefully a little bit more positive than that. But I do want to start with this, with the fact that you're losing. We are losing in the world of philanthropy and generosity. When we look at total giving, we see this chart, right? Giving USA, and we see something like this. We'll have some fun with arrows. It's going up. $427 billion has been giving, which is an astronomical amount of money. That's amazing. And then if we look at kind of a proxy for how much do people actually care about giving, we can look at something maybe like search trends, like donate to nonprofit, give to nonprofit. And we can see kind of over time, there's more people like actively looking, searching for, wanting to, in theory, give. So people kind of care more and they're giving more, at least on the surface. If we pull that back a little bit, we can see this. Have you heard about the stubborn 2%, right? 2% of GDP is where charitable giving has been at going back about 20 years. And if we actually look at something that I think is more interesting, when we look at disposable income, so when we have money left over, what do we spend it on? That's been stuck at 2% going back 40 years, which means we are no more generous today with our disposable income than we were 40 years ago. And what's even worse, actually, is we pull that back even further, and we look at the number of households that are actually giving in the United States. We see a chart like this, where it's on a steady decline. We see something similar in Canada with the number of people that are claiming a tax deduction when they file their taxes. And what's worrying about this is there's actually more donor households, right? Populations are growing. So if there's more people, but fewer people actually giving, this means our collective donor household conversion rate looks something like this. So at a time when we've never had more data at our disposal, it's never been easier to collect money online, it's never been easier to send a message and connect to someone, we are actually getting worse at turning people's care and compassion into conversions and contributions. And it's your fault. It's my fault. It's our fault. Marketing Sherpa a few years ago did a study with, surveyed nonprofit and for-profit marketers and said, how do you make your decisions? And number 1 was, we just kind of like shoot from the hip. And number 2 was like whatever we did last year, basically. And this hits very close to home for me when I was a director of development and when I was a marketing director, because I'd love to say that wasn't me, but this was me. I didn't really know what else to do, so let's just do what we did last year and hopefully do it better, add 10% maybe. Science and Philanthropy Initiative actually studied, are organizations actually checking themselves? And they found that 71% aren't regularly evaluating, is what you're doing working? Is the status quo even working for you? And they found that those organizations that regularly just evaluated, is what we're doing working, outperformed those organizations that didn't regularly evaluate what they were doing. And then they looked, well, what about experimentation? They found that 29% of organizations had used a scientific methodology over 5 years. So not very many people are testing and experimenting, even though, again, they found that those who did outperformed those organizations that didn't use scientific methodology and research. And this isn't just like them, they don't test, but we do, because we actually surveyed you, and many of you, and it's slightly higher, but less than 40% of many of you that participated in our survey benchmark said you had ran a test or experiment in this year. So we're kind of shooting from the hip. We're not really testing to see what works. And this is why we're losing. And this is why it's our fault. But hopefully you've had some ideas, some inspiration, some tips, some tactics that you can take home. And so what I want to spend the rest of the time with is saying, how can we make sure that we're not stuck in the same situation 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 3 years from now? So here's a few frameworks that we can learn from. And the first one is this. Who knows what this is? Just shout it out. That's right. This is not a vacuum, my friends. This is a Dyson. So I had no idea what a Dyson was until early in my marriage. I asked my wife, Liz, like, hey, what do you want for anniversary? And she said, a Dyson. And so I'm not the smartest man in the world, but I'm not a total idiot. And I was like, you don't buy your wife a vacuum for your anniversary. It's a test. It's a trap. So like, here's perfume, or something like that. what I came to learn is she really did want that, and these things are freaking awesome. They're also freaking expensive. But in addition to looking like you're vacuuming the moon, it uses something called centrifugal force, which alleviates the need to use a bag. So it's more powerful and you don't need those annoying bags, which is interesting. So the inventor of the Dyson, his name is James Dyson, and here was the model that hit the market back in the mid-'80s. Now, he didn't have just this idea one day, he's like, I'm going to invent a centrifugal force vacuum. That's not really where ideas come from. That's not how we actually innovate. He was just so frustrated using this thing, and maybe some older folks are having like nightmares about using these vacuums. But he was so frustrated using this vacuum, and it did suck, or didn't suck. I don't know, it didn't work very well. And he was just tired of it, and so he said, I'm going to make a better vacuum. But he got the idea for centrifugal force from actually a sawmill. He tells a story about sneaking into a sawmill, like climbing over the fence to see how do they clean up their shop and get rid of all this sawdust. How do they keep it so clean? The reason why he wanted to know that was because he was making wheelbarrows at the time, and instead of using paint, which rusts and chips, he was using this thing called a fusion epoxy, which goes on smooth but was a nightmare or a total mess for the plant or facility. So he's like, who else is doing this, and how can I clean this up? And the whole reason he was making wheelbarrows was because he was frustrated. He's a very frustrated man. He was very frustrated using this. So if you live in the Northwest like I do, or if you live in England where it kind of rains a lot, these wheelbarrows also kind of suck, right? They get stuck in the mud. So he invented this thing called the ball barrel. And you can tell it was the 70s or maybe Boulder, Colorado, I'm not sure. Yeah, Coloradans get that one, that's good. So he invented this thing, and he actually got the idea for that ball barrel kind of when he was making amphibious vehicles for the military. So you can see this like pattern to innovation wasn't very linear. It was a series of different steps and different things that actually led him over a course of years to have this revolutionary breakthrough that makes you wonder if your wife really wants a vacuum, right? This is where we ended up where we are. So this idea of being able to translate ideas and our experiences from one way to another is something that some researchers have called associating. And Clayton Christensen, who wrote The Innovator's Dilemma, and a few other researchers spent 6 years looking at the most innovative CEOs and what is it that is unique to them, or what is it that they do. They're trying to decode their innovation to say, what do they possess, or what do they do that makes them so innovative? And they found the number one thing, the kind of skill, was associating. They called it a backbone skill. But then they found 4 other kind of like supplementary skills. And again, these people weren't born with these. Like we can learn these, we can grow in these. One was questioning, observing, networking, and experimenting. Those were the kind of 4 supplementary skills. And the term they use is this helps you create something called creative intelligence, or really your ability to problem solve or create unique ideas. So if we bring back James Dyson, of course he's associating, but questioning, right? Why does this vacuum, again, not suck or suck? It's hard to avoid that, actually, with vacuums. But why does this wheelbarrow not work, right? He's questioning the status quo of where things are currently at. Then he's a keen observer of his own experience, looking like, what is my experience? And if it's my experience, maybe other people are having a similar experience, and how can we change it? Networking is a bit of a stretch with the sawmill industry. He kind of is like corporate espionage, but he's intentionally going outside of his industry to learn from others. So we'll call it networking just for the sake of this. And then experimenting. How many iterations do you think it took him to move from prototype to first bagless vacuum in the 80s? So shout out number, take a guess. 1,150, 5,127 iterations over 15 years. This is not easy work. It takes time, it takes effort. And through rapid experimentation, you can figure out this type of thing. This is an example of how these factors work to lead to innovative breakthroughs. And I think it's something that we can borrow from in our space as well. So associating is kind of the key, but we can question things. Hopefully you're already starting to question some of your status quo. Do you need a gift array? Do you need a gift array at all times? What if we just empowered owners to say, how much would you like to give? Maybe at certain points in their life cycle. Maybe points when they come back. Why do we send emails like this? Why can't we send emails more like this? Why can't they even look more simple or less? Why do we have to do this? Why do emails have to be long? Or short? Why can't they be, just wait for it, wait. 2,200 words in this case. Who says it has to be so short? Question the status quo, and hopefully, again, you've seen this. And it's not just with our tips and our tactics and our strategies, but even more of our general approaches, like, why do we care so much about this next generation of giving right now? It's an interesting conversation. They're not giving right now. when we have a whole group of under-targeted, under-marketed people who are giving. In this case, it was 72% of all online transactions when we looked across multiple clients. 72% of transactions, not revenue, transactions came from 55 plus. Are you really targeting like boomers and up? Why do we do that? Or even taking a step back further sectorally, fundraising, 7 out of 10 fundraisers are women, yet 3 out of 10 are in leadership. What's going on? We need to be questioning the status quo because what we're doing isn't working. So why is it the way that it is? And then we can be keen observers of our own experience. This is what's great about digital marketing and online fundraising is we are sitting on 2 gold mines of observation, and we use it every single day. One is your work email, and one is your personal email. It's a live look of my inbox as we speak. It's brutal, but what kind of brands do you look forward to getting? Have you ever tried unsubscribing and see what they do to prevent you from unsubscribing? Do they say maybe delay? What other kind of updates could you get? Is that a tactic that we could use to lower unsubscribe rates? Maybe pause? We can generate ideas from our own inboxes all the time as long as we're keenly aware and looking for that observation. And anytime we make an online purchase is also an opportunity for us to learn. This is like natural research and development, just as you live your life, but you need to be intentional about it. So this is a real story that happened to me just like a month ago. So I was on Instagram, which exists for me to just get third-party validation about how cute my son is. Yeah, there he is taking some of his first steps at the Chicago White Sox game. There's this debate about like manipulation or persuasion. This is manipulation. There's no real reason for me to like show that to you other than just to show it to you. So I'm on Instagram, I see this ad, I click this ad, which is rare, and then I go on to make not one purchase, but 2 purchases when I had no intent at all. So what happened is, so my son's 1.5, I travel quite a bit, so I'm tired a lot, and as I get older, I found like this is harder to lose and this is getting easier to lose. And so an ad literally basically said, lose this, keep this, and have more energy. So I was like, done. Click. You got me good. And so I go to this site and it's like, this is a pill and you can get it for free, just pay for shipping. I was like, sucker's game, awesome. Buy this, put in my information, and then the next step goes, we actually have another pill and it works great with the pill that you just bought. This one's about workouts. And I was like, I could work out. I could do that. They ordered my credit card information, 1-click purchase, and I'm out. And before I knew it, I'd kind of purchased these 2 bottles of pills from Instagram. I was like, whoa, what happened? But what's interesting about the kind of instant upgrade is we saw this in our research study with raised donors where a few organizations, once they'd captured your information and said you've made a one-time donation, they actually had an instant upgrade to recurring with 1 click, but not before they actually thanked you and then had value proposition as opposed to why you should be monthly or recurring donor, right? And we've seen this kind of work in some of our client work where we call it a serial ask, where you thank the donor and you say, there's more to fight for. Would you consider making another gift to a different project or a different fund? 5, 10, 15, 20% sometimes people will give again. So it's interesting to see it work for our clients, see it in the research, and then get totally suckered in by it from a for-profit business. There's something in it. And so I was trying to analyze like what just happened, and if we look at this kind of conversion framework from the folks at Mech Labs that we use a lot and I find very useful to see why do we make decision. In this context, my motivation, again, to lose this, keep this, and get energy, and their value proposition was like, bang, done. And it was so high my motivation and so clear the value proposition that I ignored every red flag that should have been present about anxiety, credibility, trustworthiness. So here's what I found out. While the shipping was all that I paid for, I had started a 14-day free trial of not just 1 subscription, but 2 subscriptions. And do you know what day I called to cancel my 14-day trial? Day 15. So $240 later, full of shame and regret, I start Googling this company and found out F on the Better Business Bureau site, multiple reports of fraud. And then I actually look at their other marketing, and the ad that I saw was very contextual to me. And let's just say their main demographic is an older gentleman and performance in a room, the bedroom, right? So now I have to go tell my wife what happened. And I'm in marketing and positioning, so on the way over I go, honey, I got some bad news. But I might have some good news, right? I don't know, right? How do you position the message? The key point here is don't buy shady pills on the internet. Just should be common sense. No, the key point is, can we just be keen observers of our own experience? There's something that we can learn all the time, but we need to be looking for it. Networking, this is part of the reason why we offer these networking opportunities. How do we learn from other industries and other people? It's really important. But how do we get outside of our own industries? Like, what's going on in real estate? How are they generating leads? Have you ever looked at how they generate leads? Maybe there's something that we can learn from how real estate folks, or maybe you want to crash a conference. I researched real estate conferences, and here's a conference that came up. It's the National Real Estate and Cannabis Summit, happening next week. So we want to announce our 2020 Nonprofit Innovation, Optimization, and Cannabis Summit. We hope to see you there. Snacks will be provided. And then the last thing is experimentation, right? So I don't need to go over like the reasons to decode, and hopefully you've seen the value of experimentation, but it's beyond producing results. Tim often talks about experimentation as kind of the Trojan horse of innovation, right? By experimenting, you kind of discover new breakthroughs and ways to have new ideas. I like to call experimentation the Trojan bunny of cultural transformation, because I'm funnier than Tim, but also I love Monty Python on the Holy Grail. I watch it once a year. But once you actually start testing and experimenting, it's funny what happens with the culture. Instead of saying, well, what do you think, and what do you think, and then your boss just tells you what to do, and you're frustrated, right? You can say, well, let's test this. And then once you test, you go, you know, that wasn't that hard. And like, look what we learned. This is amazing. And over time, culture starts to transform. So I think this is a framework that we can use, and these are skills that we can develop, right, to associate, to question, to observe, to network and experiment. But it starts with being insatiably curious. If you don't really care and you're not curious, that framework's irrelevant. So here was an email response that I got from one of our Welcome Series emails where we basically said, here's a bunch of new research, things that we've learned to decode giving and generosity. I hope you find them useful. And this person said, we're all set. We actually teach fundraising and consult. And so I got all hot and bothered and went on a LinkedIn rant and actually showed this email and said, once you take this mindset, you start to die. I was so frustrated. And one of the people who commented is Harvey McKinnon, who actually literally wrote the book on monthly giving, who was here. And he came in a day early and sat in the very front row on our email fundraising optimization workshop. That's being insatiably curious. Saying we're all set isn't. So I was a little fired up in the moment. Oh, Harvey McKinnon's a wild dancer, by the way. It was nuts. And speaking of wild dancers, our president, Jeff Giddens, also commented later and said, maybe they're already dead. But the point here is you have to be insatiably curious. Otherwise, this is irrelevant. But then develop your creative intelligence. So hopefully that's a framework for how we can generate new ideas consistently and fight against the status quo. But here's the thing. All the best ideas, strategies, tips, tools, tactics, whatever it might be, doesn't necessarily get things done. You still have to do the work. There's nothing that I can necessarily do from on stage or optimization. It's up to you to actually do the work. So now, what do we do? So I want to leave you with this analogy. It does come from the world of hockey. I am legally required to talk about Tim Hortons hockey or curling every time I speak in the U.S., so I'm going to get this in. Any hockey fans, by the way? Yeah. The rest of you know what hockey is? Good? Okay. It's generally a sport played on ice, dominated by Canadians, kind of Scandinavians, occasionally Russians, and Americans from Minnesota, right? It's 5-on-5, and then you have a goalie who kind of defends your goal. And there's a unique strategy in the game of hockey when you're losing. What is it? Pull the goalie. It's in the title, so it's a bit of a spoiler. But yeah, you pull the goalie. So a few quants from Wall Street who run a hedge fund and have backgrounds in mathematics and went to MIT and things like that, they actually had this question. We're saying, like, well, does pulling the goalie even work? Like, everyone pulls the goalie, but does it actually work? And so they actually went back and did a rigorous data analysis. And what they found is actually, yes, pulling the goalie increases your chances of scoring a goal by 3 times. So again, question the status quo. Just because everyone else is doing it doesn't necessarily mean that it's working. Right? How do we use data in particular to prove what works for us? But the other interesting thing is it actually increases the chances of the other team scoring by 5 times. Right? That's because you don't have a goalie anymore. So the thing is, when you're playing to win, you have to increase your risk, and you may incur a loss over the short term. There's no way around it. If you're trying to win, you have to do that. But what's interesting is they said if they did a game theory analysis and projection, if you take the proper approach, over the course of a season, a proper pull the goalie strategy would help give you 4 points. Now, for the Edmonton Oilers, 4 points doesn't matter because you suck. But for most teams, ricochet shot for Edmonton people, but for most teams, 4 points could be the difference between making the playoffs or having a high seed, or if you're a coach, maybe making, keeping your job. So it's about having success over the long term. And yes, you may take a short-term loss. It's not about getting it right all the time. It's about getting it right over time. When you start doing experimenting and testing, particularly if you use a tool like Winston, you can chart your progress, and you might see something like this, right? That looks bad. Down to the right, but it's good if it's a part of something like this. It's not about getting it right every single time. It's about what happens over time. So that's why you should pull the goalie in this context. But then there's the whole question of when do you actually pull the goalie? So that was the other thing that they looked at, is when should you actually pull the goalie? So when do you think is the optimal time to pull the goalie when you're down by 1 goal? 2 minutes? Minute and a half? I did this in Chicago a few weeks ago, and someone said the third quarter. It's funny, but very wrong. Here's what they found. 6 minutes and 10 seconds is when statistically you should pull the goalie to maximize your chances of winning. When's the last time you saw a goalie pull in a hockey game at 6 minutes? Here's the average time that a coach pulls their goalie in the NHL. 1 minute and 43 seconds, which means there's a 4 minute and 27 second delta or difference between when statistically they should do something to maximize their chances of winning and when they actually do something. And what's funny is when you're actually down 2 goals, this gap actually increases. It doesn't go from 4 minutes. It's actually a 10-minute difference. You should pull the goalie at 12 minutes, and they do it around 2. There's this huge disconnect. But the other thing is, when you're further behind, the more risky you need to be, the more early you have to make decisions. But when I first heard this research, I came across it on Malcolm Gladwell, who is Canadian, and I read this research study. I saw this, and I was just like, why? That was the first question. Why is there such a big gap? And it's something that you've heard us talk about, or not us, but different speakers, and I think it's fear. I honestly think it's fear. The irony is, if it's fear of losing, you're already losing. And every second that you do not pull the goalie increases your chances of losing. So then it has to be something more like irrational, something emotional. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to lose by more. I just want to avoid the media scrutiny or whatever it might be. So is it fear? So when I heard this, I instantly thought of the scenario that I'm in, that you're in, that we're in, where we're getting worse. And like, why is this the case that it is? Why are we getting worse at this? Is it fear? Are we scared to lose? Got bad news. We're losing already. Sick kids, they weren't playing to just lose less. That should be very inspiring to us, right? Play to win, not just play to avoid a greater loss. So what can you do as you leave this place, as you go back to your jobs? Here's the challenge and charge that I would have for you. 1, be insatiably curious. Without that, some of this other stuff is irrelevant, but develop your creative intelligence. And even more so than that, please try to play to win. Pull the goalie. Good luck.